When I left as ambassador, my last day was the inauguration of President Biden. It was on January 20th. I remember I came back to the embassy and I got a call from the new Middle East director of the White House. And he said, "Mr. Ambassador, you're my first call that I'm making from the White House." And I said, "Sir, you're my last call I'm taking as ambassador." So January 20th, 2021 was my last day being Israel's ambassador. And I gave a couple of exit interviews at the time. And they asked me, who's next? I said, no one is next. And the reason why no one's next is one problem that the Biden administration had. They were appeasing Iran.
Hey folks, Erick Stakelbeck here. Welcome to this very special clip from the Watchman TV show on TBN. Benjamin Bibi Netanyahu is set to once again take the reins as Israel's prime minister and complete a remarkable political comeback. Netanyahu's Likud party, joined by a coalition of right-wing and religious parties, will lead a new government after their convincing victory in Israel's November 2nd elections. It was the fifth time in under 4 years that Israelis headed to the polls, and the hope is that the new government will bring strength and stability. In Benjamin Netanyahu, Israel has elected a man who has shown both of those attributes for years. Bibi is Israel's longest-serving prime minister, having previously led the Jewish state from 1996 to 1999, and then again from 2009 to 2021. And the man by his side for much of that second run was Ron Dermer. Not only did Dermer serve as Israel's ambassador to the United States for over 7 years, he also worked closely with Netanyahu as his top advisor. He joined us from Jerusalem for an exclusive interview to break down what Bibi's return means and what comes next for Israel as it faces a host of unprecedented challenges and opportunities. Take a look. You've obviously, as you said, worked closely with Prime Minister Netanyahu for years now. He could have gone off into the sunset. He's had an incredible career leading Israel, but he's coming back. Do you think, Ambassador, that he sees himself as maybe even like a Churchillian figure, kind of a figure of destiny almost? He is the man who can counter this Iran nuclear threat better than anyone else.
There's no question. In this sense, he's definitely a man on a mission. He's always been driven by this from my very first conversation with him, going back 20 years, where he tells me, you have to help me stop Iran from developing nuclear weapons. This goes back to 2000. And without Netanyahu, without him speaking and him acting, he raising the alarm and doing operations as a prime minister that he authorized, Iran would have had nuclear weapons a long time ago. He has been driven by this because he sees it as the one existential threat, the one threat to the very survival of Israel. That's why he went to Congress in 2015. It wasn't an easy decision for him. He went into the lion's den. He stood there and he challenged the sitting president of the United States, and the United States is Israel's most important ally by orders of magnitude, but he challenged the foreign policy of a sitting president, then President Obama in 2015, in speaking out against this nuclear deal with Iran, because he knows what a disaster it will be for us, because it gives them a path to a nuclear arsenal. Absolutely. And it pays that path with gold. And he took that stand. By the way, that stand helped us advance peace with our Arab neighbors. They gravitated towards Israel, understanding that they could rely on us in this fight, even if the United States would not be with us at that time. So there's no question that the fact that the Iranian issue, the nuclear threat from Iran, has not been neutralized. And I think he would also like to complete the process that he started with peace in the Arab world.
Yeah.
In 5 months, we made 4 peace agreements. So Netanyahu himself is responsible for more peace agreements with Arab states, twice as many as all of his predecessors combined. And what he'd like to do is complete this circle of peace, which means to bring Saudi Arabia into a peace agreement with Israel, to bring Oman into a peace agreement, to bring other Arab countries. And the only ones we're going to be left with, Eric, Iran and its proxies, and then maybe a couple of countries that are dominated by the Muslim Brotherhood. That's it. And what it would mean is effectively ending the Arab-Israeli conflict. Because when Israel and Saudi Arabia have peace, we have ended the Arab-Israeli conflict. We wouldn't have ended the Israeli-Iranian conflict or the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. It's not the same thing. We're still going to have to work to try to get a peace with the Palestinians, and would help if the Palestinians realize, we're not foreign colonialists in the land of Israel.
We're not going anywhere.
We're not going anywhere, but also we come from here. It's not just that we're not going. This is where the patriarchs of the Jewish people prayed, where our prophets preached, where our kings ruled. When they recognize that the Jewish people are here in this country, not just by might, by virtue of our might, but by right, then we can begin this peace process with them and hopefully resolve it. But right now, we have, I think, two twin goals, is confront Iran, prevent them from ever developing nuclear weapons, and I think expand the peace. And of course, as prime minister, he'll deal with the economic challenges that Israel's facing, like other countries, inflation. He's done a great job being a shepherd of Israel's economy, helping bring it into the 21st century and beyond, where Israel's become a global technological leader, as you know well. He was definitely the single most important individual in terms of liberalizing the Israeli markets, embracing capitalism and free enterprise, and seeing Israel take off.
By the way, you mentioned Israel's right to this land. This city, the Jewish people were here 3,000 years ago. I have to ask you about another issue you know very well, the U.S.-Israel relationship. Of course, you were ambassador to the U.S. for 8 years, was it?
7.5.
What a run. You lay out, obviously, Iran, the Abraham Accords, and furthering the Abraham Accords. Do you think the Biden administration, clearly on a different page with Iran and the approach to Iran, are you a bit concerned that the Biden administration does not seem to have really taken a major effort to advance the Abraham Accords? They've said, well, the Abraham Accords are a good thing, but did you think that by now we may have seen more countries come into the fold already?
No, I didn't. In fact, when I left as ambassador, my last day was the inauguration of President Biden. It was on January 20th. I remember I came back to the embassy and I got a call from the new Middle East director of the White House. And he said, Mr. Ambassador, you're my first call that I'm making from the White House. And I said, sir, you're my last call I'm taking as ambassador. So January 20th, 2021 was my last day being Israel's ambassador. And I gave a couple of exit interviews at the time. And they asked me, who's next? I said, no one is next. And the reason why no one's next is one problem that the Biden administration had. They were appeasing Iran. When you appease Iran, you actually shrink all of the political space. You take all of the oxygen out of the room for an Arab leader to stand with an Israeli leader to make peace. Because what Trump did, and we're grateful for Trump for doing this in the Trump administration, on September 15th, 2020, Trump is standing next to Netanyahu and next to the foreign ministers of the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain at the White House when they signed the Abraham Accords. The Abraham Accords do not happen without tacit Saudi support. They're the invisible hand of the whole peace agreement. If you fly from Israel to the Emirates or Israel to Bahrain, you got to cross Saudi airspace. There's no peace without them, without at least them giving a green light. They haven't made the decision themselves, but the Saudi leadership understood that this peace was in their interest. When that happened, that picture you see in the White House, when they signed the Abraham Accords, what they understand back in Riyadh and what they understood back in Dubai and in Abu Dhabi and in Bahrain and elsewhere was that standing at the White House were two people, Netanyahu and Trump, who were confronting their worst enemy, that was Iran. That's right. They weren't appeasing Iran. Netanyahu was doing all these operations in Syria, bombing Iran, taking military action almost daily against Iran. And Trump was the person who took out Qasem Soleimani, the head of the IRGC. When America's appeasing Iran, what argument can these Arab leaders give their own people of why they're moving into peace with Israel? There's a flip side to this. The second Biden ends his policy of appeasing Iran, the second they shift gears, you can move the Abraham Accords and expand it very quickly.
Hey everyone, thanks for checking out the Watchman Newscast. If you enjoyed this episode and want to see more, make sure you go ahead and hit the like button, click subscribe, and tap the bell icon to turn on notifications for new Watchman Newscast episodes every weekday.